What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the Big Five Pod, episode number 128, and the first of the conference previews of the 2025-2026 season. Cope, we have just about made it to the real deal here. I'm, of course, co-host Kyle Morello, co-host Jake Kopsick next to me. Cope, we are about a week away from college basketball season, from all the Big Five teams being in action. I know how you're feeling, but I'm going to ask you anyway. How you feeling?
We're great, Kyle. First of all, big win for the Broncos last week, 33 points in the fourth quarter. Pretty remarkable. Best win since the Super Bowl. But anyway, to stay on topic with hoops, Kyle, 11 days from right now, I'm going to be at Hagan Arena covering Steve Donahue's opening game with St. Joe's when they play Lafayette. And then we're in the swing of things, man. And then the season starts. So we'll have a lot of stuff coming out. We're going to preview the Ivy League soon. We'll have every league covered, every team in the Big Five covered. But we're moving on, Kyle. And it comes up on you quick. It really does. The objects in the mirror are closer than they appear, for sure. Because, I mean, it felt like when there was 60 days, I was like, oh, man, we're getting closer. So we're almost at single digits now, Kyle.
Yeah.
We're almost there. I'm building out my schedule. I was at 46 games last year. I want to get up over 50 this year. So catching up on sleep now, because we won't get it for the next couple months. But excited, Kyle. It is on the horizon.
We actually won't get it until May. So
you don't sleep ever, honestly. Like, you don't.
No, you really don't. Because then there's transfers and coaching carousels. And listen, we're far away from that. Right now, we got the main thing, which is the season. And by the time this episode releases, we are going to be in single digits for when the season starts. So super excited for that. And our first conference and team preview will be with Riley Frain of the Portal Report, Mid-Major Madness. We're going to go over Drexel. We're going to go over the CAA. So he's going to be joining us in just a few moments. But right now, we're going to do a little quick hitters. So Cope, grab that ball. Do your excuse me. Ooh, almost had a cough there. Do your thing. Let the people know what's going on while I cough.
It's a good thing there's a never flat ball, because it feels like it gets
you need it a lot.
Few and far between that I'm going to have to pump this thing up. Anyway, yeah, some Drexel skewed quick hitters here, given that we're going to talk Drexel and we're going to talk the CAA with our guy Riley Frain, who, by the way, does great work for Mid-Major Madness, does great work for Hoops HQ, does great work for the Portal Report. Just a top-tier guy on top of all of that. Just one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet. Yeah, behind Aaron Bracey, our next most frequent guest we've had on. Stand-up guy, one of the best. Kyle, let's do one coaching point, then we'll get into some recruiting news. So in the wake of Jason Allison, this is kind of old news at this point. He left as the chief of staff at Drexel to move back closer to home and take an assistant coaching job at Coastal Carolina with the Chanticleers. His replacement has been hired, and that would be Tim Brooks, a John Gallagher assistant from the last couple of years, who, of course, John Gallagher we have covered on this podcast, even back to our inception many years ago. Spent the last 2 seasons as an assistant coach at Manhattan College under John Gallagher. Prior to that, to Manhattan, he worked for the Philadelphia 76ers as a basketball intelligence coordinator, where he collected information on draft prospects. And then prior to the 76ers, he worked at Hartford, again, for John Gallagher, with that great team that won the America East in the 2020-2021 season, made their first ever NCAA tournament. You remember that feel-good story, build the neighborhood. John Gallagher was your neighborhood guy. And the Hartford Hawks, Kyle, with Tracy Carter, who actually used to play at LaSalle, is from Philly. That team made the NCAA tournament, where unfortunately they lost by a lot of points to the eventual champion Baylor Bears. So only coaching point we have, Tim Brooks, new assistant coach of the Drexel Dragons. Kyle, 3 recruiting notes to go over here for Drexel in the class of 2026. First, let's start with a Philly guy, where if this guy makes it on campus next year, there's going to be 3 guys in the city of Philadelphia on the Dragons. And that would be Imhotep guard Latif Lorenzano White. He's a 6'4" guard from Imhotep. Held offers from NCA&T, where Monty Ross and Colin Daly coach, and Towson. So Drexel beating out 2 CAA foes for Latif. Also had offers from Buffalo, Albany, Loyola, Maryland, amongst others. So always love when the Big Five teams can keep the best players home. Imhotep under Andre Noble, very good always, but the last couple years especially been really, really good. Latif Lorenzano White, come on down to University City, the 33rd and Market. You don't have to go very far. The one local commit of this class, we'll talk about two others. How about the second? 3-star 6'5" guard B.J. Brown in the class of 2026. He is from Sumter, South Carolina. Had some offers from some smaller schools down in his area. He did have Towson. He did have Coastal Carolina. He also had Presbyterian College as well. But that would be number two. They all kind of came very quickly. Drexel tying up their 2026 class. Because interestingly enough, Kyle, no freshmen on this upcoming team.
Nope.
Last year there was 4. Well, you had Horace Simmons, who was a redshirt. But, yeah, no freshmen this year. Now, again, you have Moses Hips, who's a redshirt. But different way of team building and you have Ignacio, the late ad they had, but there was no like high school recruits on this team. So Drexel switching that up next year. The second commit they got was B.J. Brown. The third, Kyle, how about this? This is a pretty fun, interesting one. Trey Paulding, a guard from Lee's Summit North High School in Lee's Summit, Missouri. He held offers. He took a visit to Cornell, had some D2s as well. But how about this, Kyle? A high school soccer goalie and a baseball player as well. So
athlete.
A multi-sport athlete in Trey Paulding. But yeah, 3 guys we're not going to have to worry about until let's knock on wood, you never know in the NIL era because nobody signs national letters of intent anymore. But Drexel got commitments from these 3 players, headlined by a local product in Latif Lorenzano White. And with that, Kyle, let's get to what I say, the meat and potatoes. Our guy, Riley Frain. We'll talk about Drexel. We'll cover the Dragons. We'll also break down the CAA a little bit. Preview the conference with the mainstays, with the teams you need to know. As we are 11 days, Kyle, 11 days away from when this Dragons team hosts Widener at the DAC and they get the season going.
And that's from this recording. By the time you all see it, it's going to be even less. So without further ado, the season about a week away. Let's start previewing these teams. First, we're going to start with Drexel and the CAA. To help us out with that, here's Riley Frain. All right, people, and as promised, we have the one and only Riley Frain joining us. And he's been on this podcast before, but just, mid-major madness extraordinaire. Riley, it's good to be back. It's good to be talking mid-major basketball, CAA basketball in a minute here, Drexel basketball, of course, Big Five basketball. But in general, we're back. How you doing?
Yeah, just, I don't know when this is going to be posted, but almost a week out from the season here. It's exciting time in college basketball, gearing up for it, and excited to be here talking some CAA with you guys today. Thank you so much for having me on. I always love the coverage you guys do at the Big Five, so always happy to be here. But yeah, is there a better time, in college basketball than, the week leading up to the season and all the anticipation and hype surrounding it and all the big storylines that are brewing? And particularly in the Big Five, all the coaching changes and everything going on. So yeah, really exciting time, guys. I'm excited to be here to talk a lot about the CAA and Drexel.
Yeah, and we appreciate you being here. Of course, your other portion of what you do with college basketball is the Portal Report, which is all off-season stuff. Now we're getting into, as Cope likes to call it, the meat and potatoes. We're getting into, we're just about to get into it. Like you said, we're a little over a week away, or about a week away. So we're going to get right into it. First preview we're doing of preview season is Drexel and the CAA. So how these episodes are going to work, mostly except for the A10 episode, obviously, because there's 2 teams. But we're going to go over the team first. We're going to do a deep dive on everything, and then do a little conference preview after that, see where that particular Big Five team stacks up against the rest of the conference, how that conference should play out in our eyes and whoever else we have on to. But Riley, we got you on here today to talk about Drexel and the CAA, so let's get right into it. And this team is looking a lot different than last season's team. A lot of young guys, not necessarily different in terms of the actual players on the roster. There are some new guys, which we'll go over, but there's going to be a lot of different contributors on this year's team, and some that were on last year's team that were freshmen and sophomore that did not play a whole lot, which we'll get into. But the first thing I want to get into is one key contributor from years past, who is an upperclassman who will be returning, and that's Garfield Turner, who obviously missed all of last season with an injury, back this year for his senior season. He's going to be a team leader in terms of his leadership, and then also on the court as well. Averaged 5 and 4 a game his last season, playing in 23-24, second on the team in blocks and field goal percentage. behind Amari Williams. So there's a lot missing that was missing from him last year, obviously being out. Now he's back. What do you see his role being? One, a year removed from injury, but then two, being the upperclassman of this team.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't heard word lately on it. You know, I remember listening to your quick plug for your interview with Coach Spiker. That was probably about a month and a half ago, something like that. But yeah, he talked about, kind of Garfield's role over the course of the offseason and even last year when he was out with injury, being a guy who was, the veteran that guys could look up to as, almost as another coach on the sidelines for them. I know Coach Spiker joked about that, again, in your interview a little bit. But yeah, a veteran guy who can be relied on. Again, I'm not 100% sure what the situation is like with his health currently, if he's 100% ready to go in practice and if he'll be back for week one and what's going on there. I don't know if maybe either of you have a little more info. But yeah, I'd imagine just his role is going to be a guy who, number one, they're going to hope can take a step forward here, assuming he's healthy. He's going to play some pivotal minutes in this lineup, maybe a little bit weaker in the front court than we've seen in years past from these Drexel teams. Obviously, Amari Williams 2 years ago was sort of the focal point of that. But even last season, some strong guys in the front court with Cole Hargrove, who of course moved on this offseason, but losing all four of their leading contributors, they're going to have to rely on Garfield Turner to hopefully take a step up here. But just as a veteran guy within this roster in Spiker's rotation, he's going to need to be a guy that some of these younger players can kind of look up to and rely on as a guy who has experience, who they can go to say, hey, what works here in the CAA, what works here with Drexel, what does Coach Spiker want from me, what is he looking for? So yeah, that always a valuable piece to have within your rotation. I'm sure we're all here hoping he's going to come back healthy and take that jump and have a really good year here as a veteran piece. But just having a guy you can rely on to sort of, again, be another sort of coaching piece on the bench or in the locker room is always valuable for a team like Drexel that again is going to skew a little bit young, is looking for some guys to take steps up and that maybe didn't play major minutes last year. So hopefully a healthy Garfield Turner is someone they can kind of rely on to play that veteran leader role.
Yeah, I'll piggyback off that, Riley. His injury last year made Drexel really, really thin up front. And besides Cole Hargrove, they had to play a William Garcia Adson or play Victor Panov in that spot simply because they had two freshmen behind them, and Ralph Akuda and Clem Edemwanyan, who I think are going to play a lot more this year and could play bigger roles, and they're going to have a lot more depth with those two moving into a sophomore year. But you could tell, like, when they were in the conference tournament and they lost to Towson in that second game, Victor Panov was out. Cole Hargrove was banged up in that game. If there was foul trouble, they really didn't have anybody else. So he's going to be massive coming in. And this offseason, we were able to talk to Shane Blakeney. We were able to talk to Zach Spiker. We were able to talk to Will Shavis on Spaces. Not a bad word at all could be said about this guy. His impact was still felt throughout the team, even with him being out last year. And unfortunately, being in a sweatsuit, not a jersey on the sideline, but his impact was still there. I mean, it's important for the culture of the team that he's still going to be here. But his rebounding numbers, I love that Zach Spiker called him a bull in a china shop. Always loved that term, but especially for a junkyard dog like him, offensive rebounds, kick out threes, clogging up the middle, blocking shots, but especially rebounding and just giving size and some attitude and some toughness inside is really, really going to be big for Drexel. And how about a veteran presence as well, a guy who's been in the program, because although you have Ralph Akuda and Clem Edemwanyan coming into their second year, they played very seldom as freshmen. You have the transfer Martin De La Porterie coming in. I hope to God I said that correctly. But a guy that's been there. There's not another center on this team that's got the experience at Drexel with Zach Spiker like Garfield Turner. So obviously his veteran presence and his play are going to be needed there, but to know the demands of the program, the culture, guy that everybody raves about and loves, very important too, that although it's great to still have him on the bench and be a player coach, he'll be on the court as well. And then Riley, as far as the health update goes, I will report back to you Saturday. I am going to practice. From what we heard from Spiker, he was kind of in, kind of out. But again, that was some time ago. I will get a more definitive injury report when I am there Saturday, as they have a scrimmage against Lafayette on Tuesday the 28th. So that is coming up. I will have some injury news for us over the weekend.
Excellent. Yeah, I'll look forward to your coverage on that. And again, just to your point with Garfield Turner being a veteran guy, and some of the guys you mentioned that they're looking for in the front court to maybe take a step up here are Victor Penn, William Garcia Adson, Clem Edemoinian, who's spent some time with one of the youth Spanish national teams this offseason, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. So all guys that are expecting to take a step up, and be solid contributors sort of in that front court, maybe sort of wing positions when you look at a guy like Victor Penn off, but again, having a guy like Garfield Turner for those three to rely on, I think only makes it only makes it more viable that those three are guys we can expect to take a step a jump this season.
Absolutely. Also, we'll be at Drexel practice on Saturday as well. So Riley, we'll both get back to you there. Excited
Awesome.
for that one. Although I don't. This one might be coming out after that, so we'll see. But yeah, there's a lot of question marks in the front court. I think a lot of question marks in the backcourt as well, but let's start with one that's not a question mark. Riley, you mentioned he was on our podcast, and that would be Shane Blakeney, who last year was the sixth man on this team, really thrived in that role, 7.5 points a game, 3.6 rebounds a game, among their best perimeter defenders that they have. And this year now he's going to take a leadership role. He's going to start. They're going to count on him to have more of the scoring load on his shoulders. How do you think he'll fare in that role, being one of, if not the main guy to put the ball in the basket for this Drexel team?
Yeah, I mean, it seems like from your interview, again, a little plug with Coach Spiker, that they're pretty confident in the step he can take this year. I mean, you mentioned it, kind of six man, but a guy who was pretty quick to come off the bench for them last year and could be a plug and play scorer when they needed to. I mean, that's a very solid 3-point shooter, 34% from three last year on solid volume, averaged almost 8 points per game. But I mean, there were stretches last year where I think he really interested me, just looking at some of the game logs from last year. I mean, they go to Fairfield and he drops 16 points. He follows it up at Fordham with 13, and then they're at a neutral court matchup against Purdue Fort Wayne, and he's adding in 12 points. So this is a guy, and I mean, you look late in the year, and I think back to his conference tournament, performance as well against Towson, where he was a guy trying to lead the push late against the Towson team that was the number one overall seed in conference last year, and he finishes with 24 points in that CAA conference game for Drexel. So a guy who's shown he can be a really competitive scorer when they need him to, a guy who's shown he can do it in stretches. I think that obviously the big thing this year is he's going to have to do it consistently in the starting lineup. And again, not so much coming off the bench. He's going to have to be a guy they rely on from the get-go. But again, just it seems like there's a lot of confidence around the program on kind of the step he can take this year. I'm really interested to see what he could do. I mean, again, a microwave scorer coming off the bench, I think you give him more minutes and more consistency, and he's a guy who's going to produce for them. But I mean, we've seen it in years past. You think of last year as the typical example with this Drexel team who, they weren't very highly regarded last year. I think we were here on this, same CAA preview last year talking about how they were projected in the bottom four, and we saw some major players on that team take some big steps, from Kobe McGee to Yame Butler to Cole Hartgrove to Jason, Deuce Drake, who came in from the JUCO level last year, and all showed major improvements, which led to Drexel eventually, finishing 500 in conference play and in the upper half of the CAA, if I'm not mistaken. From last year's standings, excuse me. So, when I look at this Drexel team and I look at Shane Blakeney, I think you got to pinpoint him as the guy they're looking to sort of take that Kobe McGee, that Cole Hartgrove leap this season. I know he averaged 7.5 points, so it wouldn't quite be as big a leap as a guy like Cole Hartgrove, who was maybe averaging a point per game prior to that. But the guy they're going to expect to be the primary scorer here, this season as one of the lead returners in this Zach Spiker rotation. So, yeah, I'm excited to see what he could do. Again, this is, we've seen guys make major strides with this Drexel team. Zach Spiker's player development, and I'm totally blanking on the name of that player development program they run over there, and I'm sure you guys will fill me in right after this. But I think you look at Shane Blakeney, and I mean, you pinpoint him as the guy who's going to take that major leap this year and could be the leading contributor for this team potentially. And
Riley, that would be the PEP you're talking about, the player enhancement program.
Yes.
So me and Kyle see some PEP in the flesh on Saturday when we're there. But yeah, to me, this is like the biggest swing piece on the team. In Shane Blakeney. You talk about that player development. Well, last year, Riley, you're right. You're exactly right. Nobody expected a lot from these Dragons. Preseason number 11, finished in a tie for 8th, and in the conference tournament had Towson on the ropes there at the end to potentially knock him out. And Shane Blakeney was a huge reason why. I was at that game. 24 points in the game. They needed him to start with Victor Panoff down. They inserted him in the lineup. And although you saw 24 points, maybe it wasn't like that every night. He had some really good scoring performances down the stretch later in the conference play. But, I mean, his impact is felt just beyond what you see in the points column. Routinely, that guy drew the hardest assignment every night. I was at their homecoming game when they played Delaware. John Camden lit up this league last year, averaged almost 17 points a game. 5 points, 2 for 11 when he played Drexel. And mainly it was because Shane Blakeney was guarding him. His length, his quickness, his athleticism, he has so many great traits physically to build into a really good defender. I mean, and he just shuts the water off when he's guarding your best player. And he really can guard 1 through some. They would put him at the 4 sometimes if they really needed to put him there. So defensively, his lineup versatility is a major asset. He'll do that once again. He'll be one of the best perimeter defenders in this league once again. But scoring wise, he's going to have to do a lot. Being the super sub in the 6-man last year, he's now going to have a starting lineup role and maybe even play some point guard here. Again, being a guy he's going into his 4th year with the program. He's going into his junior year, but he redshirted his first year as well, so he has that red shirt. So an experienced guy, a multifaceted defender, that's his strength. That playmaking, he's going to have to play point guard. The playmaking, the shooting, the scoring is something he's definitely going to be asked to do a lot more of. And even if you didn't see it so much last year because his impact can permeate the box score in other ways that just the numbers can, that player development is, I think he's going to be that guy that's going to do it. Because last year, nobody expected anything, and everybody's like, oh, you lost Amari Williams, and you lost Lucas Monroe, and you lost Justin Moore. Well, all the replacements are still on the team. I think the same thing is going to remain through this year as well. And even with, it's hard to replace Kobe McGee, one of the best shooters in the entire country. And I don't think he'll be a 43% three-point shooter, but he'll still be a really good player, a really good CAA starter, a very good defender. And that offensive game, I believe, with and without the ball in his hands, will pick up as well, and he'll be a really damn good starter in this league. So he's the biggest swing piece on this team. I know what I'm going to get from him, but can he be that much better than he was last year, especially in the offensive end? I believe he can, but a lot of Drexel's success this year, a lot of it is going to hinge on how good Shane Blakeney can be.
Absolutely. And like you said, Cope, they're looking for him to be the guy. And we talked to him. I think he's ready for it. And I certainly think he's capable of doing it. So really, really interested to see how that plays out for Drexel this year. All right. I want to do a little go around here and see. I need you guys to name me one person, either that's been on the team or that transferred in, that you're looking to take a step up that maybe people aren't expecting to, weren't expecting going into the season to be a key contributor for this team who can really help them have a successful season in the CAA. So Riley, you're our guest. Why don't you start us off? Give us one name that maybe CAA fans and Drexel fans aren't necessarily expecting to have a good year that you think will.
Sure. So I sort of mentioned him briefly earlier, I think specifically when we were talking about the front court, but I'm really excited to see what William Garcia-Adston can do this upcoming season. I mean, I know they have Garfield Turner. They bring in Dylan Tingler in the front court. Victor Panoff can play a little bit of front court minutes. I think they're excited about Clem and potentially Horace, who could maybe play on the wings a little bit as well. But this is a team that's lacking a little bit of, I don't want to say star power in the front court, but a guy who's going to eat up minutes and be a consistent contributor in the front court. And it seems like from everything I've seen sort of on social media and reporting-wise this offseason, and from what I've heard from interviews with the coaching staff and whatever it may be, they're really excited about what he's done this offseason, some of his development. I don't want to sit here and say I think he's going to be a starter in the lineup. I think, we're going to sort of have to wait to see how it shakes out. I think there's a handful of moving parts within this Drexel rotation just by nature of guys they're expecting to take steps up and a couple new pieces. But I think if he can be a consistent contributor in the front court and can sort of make good on some of the potential people have maybe been talking about this offseason, Drexel has a marquee starter in the front court beside Garfield Turner, and that's only going to make them a more competitive team in the CAA. Of course, a league that's really physical down low. Always has scrappy guard play, but to have two lockdown guys in the front court who could be decent contributors, veteran guys. I know Williams not a young guy. He's spent a season at Drexel, another at Pacific, so I think he's a junior, if not, in his senior eligibility wise, whatever it may be. But a guy who I think could take a little bit of a step this year. It seems like people online and from everything I've read about are excited about him this offseason and the development he's shown, hopefully within that PEP program. And so I'm excited to see what he could do in the front court, hopefully beside a healthy Garfield Turner.
And
Yeah, right on. It's a good pick, Riley, and he was so good off the bench for them last year in the minutes that he played, being a guy that they picked up in like August. Given that their academic schedule is unlike anybody else's, I believe that's going to change in the next couple of years. Like they were able to add a guy like that so late, and he was terrific backing up at the four for them. And even if he starts, if it's depth, he was very good last year. Good pick by you. He'll do the same this year. I'm going to go with a transfer at the point guard spot. You have Deuce Drake, who leaves. He turned a very good January, February, March now into a roster spot at Indiana, which is pretty remarkable that he did that with how good that he played. But I'm going to go Eli Beard.
Yeah.
We saw at Drexel, like last year, they get Deuce Drake from the JUCO level, and they will touch every single level of basketball to get guys. Eli Beard is coming from D3 Mary Hardin Baylor down in Texas. And some of the numbers, this guy had astronomical numbers down there. Last year, 22 points a game, 40% from three, 7 assists per game. He's a little guy, kind of like Deuce Drake was. He's only 5'11", 160 listed on the website. But, man, this guy is bouncy. He can rise up on you and has a really quick trigger. And don't take that height for what it is. I think this guy has a game that's a lot bigger than 5'11". And maybe he's not going to run down the lane and dunk on your head, but very quick, very shifty, pull-up jumpers, very good, great verticality to shoot over people and can just stop on a dime and get it off. But a very, very good shooter who can make tough shots, just as Deuce Drake did last year, whether it was at the end of clock or just being a tough shot maker when he needed to be. I think he has a lot of things that fill the Deuce Drake void actually pretty well, even coming up from the D3 level. So, yeah, I think this Eli Beard is a real exciting player, and I think a Moses Hips is going to grab the headlines here with the 3-star pedigree. He's from the city. He played at Boise State last year. But Eli Beard is a really, really exciting player. So, and I think Moses Hips will be very good too. But at the point guard spot, Eli Beard can show he can distribute, he can shoot it, he can score it and make tough shots, just as Deuce Drake did for this team last year. So Eli Beard is a guy to keep your eye on. They brought in a JUCO transfer. They brought in 2 D1 transfers. But give me the D3 transfer here from Mary Hardin Baylor down in Texas. This Eli Beard's shifty. He's exciting. I think he's going to be really good this year at that point guard spot.
Couldn't agree more. That was going to be mine. So I'm glad that at least one of us touched on it, because I think if he's not going to start, he can at least slide into, that Deuce Drake role, that Shane Blakeney role, where he's the firepower off the bench. But also you mentioned the 7 assists a game. I think that's massive. 40% from 3, as you said too. So listen, if you want to take some of that scoring load off Shane Blakeney, I think this is a guy who very well could do that if needed. And he will be needed. So I like that a lot, Cope. For me, it's going to be Martin D. Laportiere. And again, I am praying I say his name right. But another JUCO guy, Cope, transferring in from Yavapai Community College in Arizona, Prescott, I believe. Averaged almost 13 points a game, 6 rebounds a game last year. He was an all JUCO, top 100 honorable mention. Led his team with almost 61% from the field, 39 blocks. So an interior guy who can score a little bit, rebound a little bit, play a little bit of defense. Sounds like a perfect 6th, 7th guy off the bench to me. Sounds like a perfect guy to slide in after Victor Panoff, after Garfield Turner, and there's other guys too. Obviously, I mean, we mentioned Clem. You mentioned Riley. I'm forgetting his name right now, but the person you have, Victor. No, I just mentioned Victor. Billiam Marcy Artson. Yes, I was looking for his name and I got blind for a second. But there's a lot of front court options, and I think he can be a good one. Again, somebody coming in from the JUCO ranks. They've had success with this. They have their PEP program, and they develop players very, very well. And maybe one of these guys that we're talking about coming in from D3 or JUCO are going to go to a high major next year. Very, very possible. We just saw 4 of them do that for last year's Drexel team. So I think Martin D. Laportiere definitely has a chance to be a key contributor on this team as a 6th, 7th, 8th man, sliding in that backup big role, forward role, and I think he's got a chance to succeed on this team. This is a team going to be filled with a lot of youngsters, a lot of JUCO guys, and I think he definitely has a spot in contributing there as well. All right. Let's talk about the season in general now, because we went over a lot of the players. We know what this team might be looking like in terms of how they're going to mesh together and kind of the experience and whatnot. Before we fully get into the rest of the CAA, Riley, we'll start with you, of course. Where in the CAA do you realistically expect this Drexel team to finish? Obviously, a lot of question marks that we just went over. Some returning guys. Who can get developed? Who's going to fill in some of these roles? Where do you think that they'll slide in the conference this year?
Yeah, I mean, realistically, I mean, I look at the CAA poll and they are voted bottom four, but I think this is a team that's could take some strides this year. I think anywhere from maybe 7 to 9, and I think it's tough to say they're going to improve on last season. I think last year, I think so many things went right for them in terms of player development and guys taking huge leaps and getting a couple guys back, and a similar situation this year where we're expecting guys to take a step up. But, I just feel like maybe there's not as many pieces here. And, I think there's still a lot of moving parts. But again, it feels like a very similar situation to last year. But just overall, I think you look at sort of, the roster they built and everything, and I think it would be difficult to see them finishing a lot higher than 7th and again, improving on last year. But I mean, anywhere from that 8, 9, 10 spot, I think is pretty realistic to say at this time. But again, I think this is a CAA where you get to the conference championship, and really anyone, you put together some of your best performances and anyone can make a run. I mean, we saw it the past 2 years with Delaware running all the way to the championship, Stony Brook the year before that. I know Drexel's done it in years past when they were a little bit further down the totem pole and made a big run, maybe as a 6th or 7th seed. And so yeah, again, it's a conference where there's a lot of parity throughout the year. I think hopefully you're going to see some guys take some steps up, and they're going to finish a little bit better than that bottom 4 where they were picked in the sort of the preseason poll here I think it was earlier in October. And I think anywhere from that maybe 7 to 10 spot. I think 7th sort of being the ceiling where they finished last year. But again, I feel like we were on this CAA preseason preview last year, sort of saying similar things and maybe talking about how they were going to finish bottom 4. And of course, again, they surprised us. So you certainly can never count Coach Spiker out, and with all the player development they have. But yeah, just again, anywhere from I think 7 to 8, 9, 10, something like that. But yeah, I think if they can get to that 7th place finish again, I think that's another really exciting season, just based on the lack of returning minutes and losing so much production and everything that's kind of gone on this offseason.
Yeah, I would agree. I think they're going to finish right smack in the middle of the pack again. I see 10 just like I saw 11. It's basically the same spot they were in last year. We just bumped them up from 11 to 10 because we have less teams, because Delaware made the mind-boggling move to go to Conference USA. But another story for another day. Riley, I agree with you. I don't think they have as many pieces maybe as they do last year. And again, it was a lot of internal player development that did go right for them. But I think the point being is I think they'll finish maybe a spot or 2 higher than that 10 because, well, what did they do at the end of last year? They played their best basketball at the very end after they had the whole season and they had time to gel with each other with a bunch of new starters and a bunch of new guys who are playing in big roles. So I think, once again, that's going to be the case for Drexel. Probably, I think somewhere at 7 to 9. I don't think they'll finish in the bottom 4 here. And just a spot, another point here to back up our Zach Spiker player development and really wringing out the towel and getting the most out of his team. Not only the 5 straight winning seasons at Drexel, last year outperformed their Ken Pom rank by 38 spots. That was the most that they've outperformed the preseason Ken Pom rank under Zach, or excuse me, at least in the last 5 years as they had 5 straight winning seasons. So last year was encouraging that even with all the losses that they had, they could turn over, they could bring new guys in, and they could still be competitive in this league. Scoring wise, I'm going to have to see it before I make a big jump for them to put them in the top 6, because they still had Yame Butler and they still had Kobe McGee, who was a really good shooter. And even with the injury to Garfield Turner, it gave Cole Hargrove an opportunity to really, really shine. Step out and hit a 3 when he could. Step out and hit a jumper. Grab rebounds. Was a monster at the rim, one of the best rim protectors in this league. So they still had talent. They had a lot of scoring, though, and I need to supplement that scoring. You have a great shooter in Kobe McGee, a terrific creator. Guy could get to the free throw line, very crafty, in Yame Butler. A guy in Deuce Drake who not only shot the lights out, distributed, made tough shots for this team and was able to create. And with those three guys leaving, I think that's what doesn't make me want to make a giant jump for them. I think they could outperform a little bit better, but that scoring. So with those three guys having the ball in their hands so much, who else on this team is going to do that? I'm not saying they can't. I'd like to see it first before I make a massive jump for them, but I do believe they'll outperform their spots again. I believe in Zach Spiker and in his ability to raise the floor of this team and get the most out of them. Just think I need that scoring and production is going to be big time. I think the defense will be good as it always is. They'll slow teams down. They'll grind you out as they always do. I think they have the athletes and the size with Dylan Tingler and Victor Panov and William Garcia adds. And you have a lot of size that you could play with at the 3 and the 4 to give you some more length and just some more strength and girth inside. So defensively, they'll be good. Offensively, though, I think there is a lot of question marks there. I'll say between 7 and 9 to to make a short story long. They'll outperform it by a couple spots. I believe in that. 10, we saw this last year. I'm pretty confident Drexel outperforms number 10.
Yeah, I think they will too. I think that's probably their floor is 10. That's where Ken Pom has them right now, leading into the season. And Cope, we mentioned this on Spaces, Riley. I believe you were on there too, but there's just so much unknown with this Drexel team that I think it's a little bit hard, just like last year, to properly rate them. But Cope and Riley, like you both mentioned, like this is a team that always is getting the most out of the players that they have. So I don't think they'll finish 10. I think it'll probably more likely be 8 or 9. 7 could happen, but again, as you both mentioned, I think that's probably their ceiling. I think 8 or 9 is probably the most realistic area in which they'll finish. And again, like they did last year, I think they're going to give teams problems. They're going to fight. And moral victories aren't always, what everybody wants, obviously. But I think last year they had a lot of games where they probably should have won some of them. I think there was a couple Towson games on there, maybe a William Mary game as well, where they were either in overtime or close or whatever. And I know teams have that always, right? But they were in a lot more games than I think their record even reflected last year. I think they could have been finished with an even better record than they did. So I think there's a very likely scenario where that happens again. And like I said, I think they'll finish above where they're projected right now. I don't think it'll be in the top half of the league by any means, but they're going to be competitive. Zach Spiker will always have this team competitive. And the way they play too, Cope, like you mentioned, they're slowed teams down. They're going to be a good defensive team. That's all going to keep them in games. What will propel them to crashing through that ceiling that we even have for them is the offensive question marks. If they can get scoring from Shane Blakeney, from some of the other guys, Eli Beard that we mentioned, what kind of step offensively does Garfield Turner take? How much more of an expanded role offensively does Victor Panov have? A lot of these questions is, I think, capping them right now with their offense. But if their offense right now Ken Pom has them projected as the 275th ranked offense in Division I basketball. If they can somehow crack the top 200 at least, I think you're looking at a team that's maybe 500 or even potentially a game above in this conference. But again, I think that's, all things go right scenario. I think the most realistic scenario is probably 8 or 9 in this league. So that's Drexel. Let's talk about the rest of the league, though, because, again, this is going to shape up to be an exciting year in the CAA. It's looking like we're going to have the same players at the top with UNCW, the reigning champ. Charleston's always in the mix. Towson had a great year last year. Riley, I know you have a Hofstra sweatshirt on right now that you're showing us beforehand. They'll be in the mix as well. So I want to Riley, give me 2 teams that you think will be competing the most for the one bid that the CAA will get come March.
Yeah, I think it's the 2 usual players. The easy picks right now are probably Towson, obviously coached by Pat Scarry, number 1 seed heading into the conference tournament last year. But, it just seems like they always come up a little bit short, despite the fact sort of always being in that top 4, upper half of the CAA over the past couple seasons. But they're returning a ton of talent this year. Obviously, the standout being last season's CAA Player of the Year in Tyler Tejada. Feels like returning a conference Player of the Year, at any mid-major level is something of a miracle. So to have a guy like Tyler Tejada back and sort of his 3-level scoring and everything everything that he brings. And, hopefully if he stays 100% healthy this year, I mean, it is a Towson team that's easily going to be in top 3 in conference this year. On top of that, returning Dylan Williamson, which, makes up their top 2 leading contributors from last season. So again, just having your top 2 leading contributors back at a level like the CAA, a mid-major conference like this is really pretty unheard of in this day and age in the transfer portal. And I thought they added on that. They built on that group really well in the transfer portal. Guys like Tyler Schmidt coming over from Valpo, Jack Dumbia from Wright State, who really excelled this past season there, bringing in a little bit of size in the front court with more sec. I like a guy like Caleb Mbaya, who they're bringing back from last season. I thought he impressed last season, and seems like he's set to make some strides this year, and hopefully we'll see some increased minutes in their front court. So I don't want to say they're returning the most minutes in the conference this year. I don't know that for fact. I'm sure I could check in on Bart Torovic pretty quickly, but just returning between Tejada and Dylan Williamson, I mean, probably the most talent in the conference, I would say. And then my second pick, I mean, is really the other big player over the past couple seasons under head coach Takio Siddle is UNC Wilmington, and obviously, a handful of NCAA tournament appearances in the last couple of years. It seems like they're always in the top 4 in the CAA here, and obviously last season, winning out at the conference championship, against Delaware in the conference final, and falling to Texas Tech, I think, in the round of 64 at the NCAA tournament last season. They don't return as much talent as Towson, but 2 guys I'm really excited to see back with the program, Noah Ross and Nolan Hodge. Nolan Hodge a little bit younger, but he made some big strides last year and has sort of taken on that leadership role for them. Noah Ross maybe not doesn't provide as much production, but still a really solid scorer, a really sound overall player, a solid 2-way guy who brings some size in the front court as well. But overall, we've sort of been joking at Mid-Major Madness that they've become the CAA Avengers because of the work they did in the transfer portal this year. It seems like they're just gathering pieces from around the rest of the league, bringing in CJ Luster, who is a potential conference player of the year type guy heading into the season. He comes over from Stony Brook, and I think he's one of the best 3-point shooters in the country, if you're asking me. But covering him at Stony Brook this past season, I mean, he's a really well-rounded offensive guy. I think could be a premier shooting guard, a guy who was getting some high major attention this offseason. So the fact that he's staying in conference but joining UNC Wilmington, I think is a huge deal for them. I look at guys on who I think are going to play pivotal role minutes for them, maybe off the bench, maybe in the starting lineup, a little bit of mix of both. But Christian May, of course, who's coming over for Towson and was a starter for them at different points. Madison Durr, who played some really solid minutes for Monmouth last year, and I think was close to being a double-digit point guy, maybe something like 8 points per game. Jonathan Lamothi coming over from North Carolina A&T, where he was sort of their leading contributor, when he was playing for them throughout the early season. So. On top of the returning guys they have from their roster last season, like Hodge and Ross, who I mentioned earlier. So, like I said, we've jokingly called them sort of the CAA Avengers, just the way they've sort of gone about, amassing pieces this offseason from around the conference, and even more to that, bringing in guys, who I think have some really big upside, like a Patrick Wessler coming over from Virginia Tech, obviously with a little bit of high major pedigree and experience, never hurts in a conference like the CAA, or a guy like Gavin Walsh, who was almost a double-double machine up at Binghamton in the America East this past season. So some really exciting upside with this team, and again, not returning maybe as much talent as Towson, but just overall bringing in a handful of guys from around the league who understand the level of play, who I think are going to help them all be competitive in what's going to be a really tight conference this year. So, to answer your question, Kyle, I would say right now those are probably the top 2 teams to look out for between Towson and UNC Wilmington. But if you're asking me, I think there's really a top 3 this year. I'm sure we could get into that in a little bit as well.
And I'm sure we will. Maybe Cope will get into it right now. Cope?
Yeah, well, I want to touch on...
Yeah, you go.
I want to touch on UNC Wilmington, and then we can discuss Charleston, who didn't make the tournament. And it was almost shocking because you just felt like they were a shoo-in at this point, even with the transition from Pat Kelsey to Chris Mack. But, yeah, Riley, you're right on. It's a great strategy by UNC Wilmington. They gave Takeo Siddle a contract extension. They committed more NIL money to the program, and they just scraped off the top of taking the best players in the CAA that you already know can be good in this conference. I think it's a perfect strategy. It sucks for the other teams. They literally took Christian May from the best team in this conference last year, at least going into the conference tournament seed-wise. They get Jonathan Lamothi, who was NCAA&T's best player. Madison Durr, by the way, don't forget, that was a guy that put 40 points on Drexel when they went to Monmouth. Madison Durr had a 40 bomb on Drexel, but you get him, you get CJ Luster. 5 interconference transfers for this UNC Wilmington team is impressive. And then you look at the guard spots. How about 3 seniors coming back? Sure, they don't have a Donovan Appy, was that his name? Do I have it correct? Sorry, I guess I got got so many guys in my head, but they don't have a Bo Montgomery. They don't have was Donovan Atwell? Was that who
Newbie?
Was? Donovan Nucci. It was somewhere in between. I think I got it mixed up with the guy going to Texas Tech. Anyway, Noah Ross, Nolan Hodge. How about Greedy Williams as well? Riley, me and you were sitting next to each other when he went coast to coast and hit the game-winning layup at the DAC against Drexel in a wild overtime game. So I see guards, even with a CJ Luster and a Christian May. I see guards that have had success in the CAA. The big thing with this team is going to be up front. They don't have Harlan Obiaha in the middle, and they don't have Kamari McGriff as well, who both transferred into the Big 12 to West Virginia and Kansas State, respectively. So a Gavin Walsh and a Patrick Wessler as well. That's where I think this team is where this team hinges. I know about the guards, had a lot of success on this team and in this league. Size-wise, though, losing those 2 guys, I mean, those 2 guys gave Drexel headaches when they had to play them and just towered over you with this. I mean, there was not a guy in the league that had the brute strength and girth that Harlan Obiaha had. So with those 2 leaving, I look to get Patrick Wessler and Gavin Walsh. The bigs, there's question marks. I feel very good about where the guards are, both with their returners and the incoming guys as well. And then, Riley, I'll kick it to you to start us off. Year 2 for Chris Mack. Going to look a lot different this year. Yep. They had Lazar Djokovic transfer to VCU. They had Ante Berzovic petition to get another year. He didn't quite get it. They had Daywilk Tavares, who's also going to be playing in the Atlantic 10 for Loyola Chicago. They're still there. They're still going to be a top team. They had some guys leave. There was a bunch of turnover, but man, this roster is really good once again. There's 3 usual suspects in this league. It's Towson, it's UNC Wilmington, it's Charleston. We haven't touched on the Cougars yet. Talk to us, Riley.
Yeah, I mean, it's a roster. You mentioned it, Jake, a roster with tons of upside just from what they did in the transfer portal. I mean, I'll hit on some of the guys quickly that I think are really catching my attention. And I think it starts with Mr. Dean, who was on the preseason all-conference. I think it was the second team, if I'm not mistaken. But I mean, for those who aren't familiar, this guy is just an athletic freak. I mean, comes over from USC Upstate, which, not the highest level program, not a program that's seen a ton of success over the past couple seasons. But I mean, his offensive game is incredible. I mean, he gets to the rim at ease. Excuse me. I mean, his athleticism, the way he attacks the rim is it's unbelievable when you watch this guy. And I think that the reason I say he's high upside is because there's definitely some things that I think people are looking for him to add to his game. His 3-point shooting maybe wasn't the best. I think he shot at like 29% from 3 last year, 28%. So he's a bit streaky at some points, but I mean, the potential with this kid, I mean, is through the roof. And if he comes good on it and is truly a conference type player of the year come the end of the season, I mean, this Charleston team is easily going to be right in the mix behind him. But I mean, you have to look at a guy like Colby Duggan. We talked about what UNC Wilmington's strategy and the success they were able to find bringing guys from around the conference. So I think Charleston was able to hit on something similar with Colby Duggan coming over from Campbell. Obviously, he was outstanding there this past season, a double-digit guy. I think when he came up to Hofstra, I mean, he put on a hell of a performance to come back and complete the win against Hofstra and almost put together something close to a double-double. But a guy who averaged almost 16 points per game, and you know what he's going to bring in this league. Can play a little bit in the front court, can be more of a wing guy. He's got some size and a solid two-way player as well. And maybe the last guy, I really want to touch on, and I think that just speaks to sort of the high upside potential of this Charleston team, is Jalen Coucher coming over from Middle Tennessee. Probably a guy who's going to play a little bit more of the point guard position for them. I think it's a little bit yet to be seen, what's going on in the backcourt for them and how things are going to sort out. But a guy who's scoring double digits, almost 11 points per game. He's averaging 4 rebounds per game. And then on top of that, almost 4 assists per game. And, I think back to his when he was a starter at now IU Indy, excuse me. I was going to say IUPUI, but now IU Indy. He was a third team All Horizon League guy and made the move to Middle Tennessee this year. And much of the same, and really only improved as a playmaker, in my opinion. And not that I watch a ton of Middle Tennessee, but just from the glimpses I've been able to catch, and obviously catching up on his game, having moved to Charleston this offseason, excited to see what he could do there. But yeah, just overall with this roster, I mean, a ton of upside. 3 guys there I'm really excited to see what they can do. And I mean, I think we know what Colby Duggan's going to give us, but I think if Counter and Dean and some of these guys like Christian Reeves are going to, can all come good on some of this potential and transition to the CAA and be solid contributors and what's a physically tough and can be a demanding league, this Charleston team is going to be right in the mix in this top three.
And Riley, I'm going to throw two more guys on there. I want to touch on Christian Reeves, first of all,
Sure.
who not only was at Clemson last year, was at Duke the year before, and just got stuck behind the log jam of centers that they had, and really just couldn't crack the rotation. He was on, I believe he was on that. He was on that Derek Lively team that just had Filipowski and Derek Lively, and just couldn't get it. And didn't have a chance. And he goes to Clemson last year, and it's like, oh, well, unfortunately, you have to play behind Ian Shefflin and you have to play behind Victor Locken. So the playing time just wasn't there for him. I think transferring down for a level will be huge. I mean, it's 7'2", 255. Like, this can be a physically imposing big, the likes that there's not many guys like that in this league. Just like when I said what I said about Harlan Obiaha, just the brute size, strength, and length of this guy. There might not be that many guys like it. So I look at Christian Reeves as a big-time guy to circle, who transferring down from Power 5 to a conference like the CAA to the mid and the low major ranks could be a guy that's unlocked with more playing time against competition that's not as good as the one that he was playing against. And then another one, how about Connor Hickman?
Sure.
I believe he still needs a waiver coming from by way of Cincinnati. Before that was it Bradley under Brian Wardle. I was at the Cincinnati Villanova game. It just didn't look like he was the type of athlete that could have played in the Big East and the Power Conference. I think this is a conference that's way more better suited for him with his shooting ability. I just think the athletes, it kind of bothered him at transferring up to the Big 12, which is just a nasty, nasty Armageddon gauntlet league to have to play in for 20 games. So I think this is a conference way better suited for him. And with the likes of a Darren Boyd and a Daywilk Tavares leaving, they need shooting. This could be a guy that fills that role right away. Being a grad student, has that experience, been on some good Bradley teams, had to stop at Cincinnati last year, now transfers to a league where he could have a lot of success. But I look at those two guys especially, and that once again, there's NIL money here, there's fan support, there's administrative support. This is as good as it gets, really, in the mid and the low major levels. To be in a league like this that really doesn't have football and it's just all basketball, you have every resource available to have Charleston be a player in this league every year, and they once again will be under Chris Mack for the second year. But we know who the usual suspects are, Riley. It's always the same. It's basically like Yale in the Ivy League.
Yeah.
Like off season happens, everybody picks up new guys. You can pretty much set your watch to who's going to be the top players in this league.
Ain't that the truth? And yeah, for me, it's probably just going to be UNCW. I just, like you mentioned, the Avengers and getting all the interconference transfers. I mean, there's nothing more really I can say about it, but they're a team that's just always around. Cope, like you said about Yale and Charleston even too, but this UNCW team as well, always around. I think they're well positioned to repeat. I know it's chalky to pick a repeat champion, or at least conference tournament champion and all that, but I think they'll be the ones representing the conference once again come March. Also, Riley, I wanted to give a shout out to your co-worker at Mid-Major Madness, Jacob Phillips, for the article on the Sopranos quotes. I was reading that the other day.
Absolutely.
For those of you who are not familiar, he previewed this conference using quotes from The Sopranos, which I am a huge fan of. I know Cope's a huge fan of as well. Mm-hmm. Riley, seemingly the same. So really, really great article if you guys have not seen it. Of course, for UNCW, I'll just do the one. To the victor goes the spoils from Bobby Baccaliari in the first season of The Sopranos, if you're familiar. So great article, great preview from Jacob, and definitely go check that out as well. All right. Riley, any final thoughts before we sign off on this Drexel and CAA preview in the year 2025?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be another exciting competitive year in the CAA. I know that the top tends to be the same, but there's always a lot of parity in this league. It feels like, I mean, you look at a Drexel last year who people picked at the bottom and they made strides. And, I think Hofstra was picked a little higher last year and maybe disappointed. So there's always a lot of fluctuation, from some of those preseason polls that we see put out. I think that always makes it a really fun, exciting league, even though we sort of know the teams that are at the top. I mean, I think back to our time in the DAC last year, Jake, against UNC Wilmington, where that game went into overtime and they Drexel took UNC Wilmington to the brink and sort of fell apart late. If I'm not mistaken, that was how it played out. But so there's always just a ton of competitive parity in this league. I think I look at Hofstra specifically right now, and I think they were picked 7th in the preseason poll, but they're the only team that far down with a guy on the all conference preseason first team. Excuse me, stumbling a little bit there in Cruz Davis. So just again a lot of parity in this league. I'm excited to see Hampton maybe take a jump this year. I'm excited to see Hofstra sort of get back to maybe being a top 6 team. I think they could take a little bit of a jump this year. The usual competitors are going to be fun. I'm excited to see what Brian Earl does in year 2 with William and Mary. A lot of people are excited about them, but and I think they were picked 4th in the preseason poll. But does the league maybe have his unique style, his unique game plan kind of figured out a little bit more this year? And his 4th maybe a little bit high. So again, there's a lot of parity in the league. As there is with every preseason poll. I'm pretty sure almost none of them ever line up how they are coming into the preseason, and I'm sure by mid-November we'll be reevaluating maybe even this interview specifically. But there's a lot of teams that I think are wild cards. I'm thinking of Campbell right now, just popped into my head as well. And the moves to John Anderjak, their new head coach who came over from Florida and on their national championship run, and everything he was able to bring into Campbell this offseason from the transfer portal, all their new additions. Again, I think there's a lot of exciting teams in this league. It's a league that loses a ton of talent every offseason. And, I think that makes it tough for, maybe fans to get interested. But I think that makes it unique every year in that, you maybe never know what you're going to get. And sort of the middle of the pack is always really fun and interesting. And there's a lot of guys who are going to look to make jumps this year that, in a year or two from now might be playing at the high major level, like we saw with Drexel this past offseason. So I think that makes it a really exciting league from top to bottom. You never know who's going to make that jump. And by the time we get to the conference championship, you might have, a 10 or 11 seed making a run all the way to the conference championship, like 12th seed of Delaware did last year. So lots to be excited about around the league. Just because, we maybe have the top 3 pinned at this point in time, it certainly doesn't mean that much. Again, there's a lot that's going to happen over the next couple months. So lots of fun storylines to tune into here. I think lots of exciting names around the league this year. I hope we hopefully touched on a lot of it, especially Drexel. I mean, they're going to, I think, like we said, I think the floor is 10th this year. So there's lots of development and growth that's going to go around over there. And I think that's sort of the story around the league as a whole. So I think it's going to be really exciting this year, as it has been in years past. I mean, we've all been watching.
Riley, it is only October. Cope, final thoughts on this episode on Drexel and the CAA.
Yeah, I mean, right on with Riley. It felt like every game that Drexel played was a close one. I mean, how many? I can think of the UNC Wilmington game, and then I was at the Delaware game that was close. I was at the game where they had to come back against Hampton, where they couldn't make a shot in the second half or early second half, and they had to come back and win. The Big 5 game they played against St. Joe's. I mean, I know I'm getting out of conference play here, but it's like they go to Monmouth, they play in double overtime. Like they play just about every game close. And then I went to the conference tournament, and it was the same thing. They played Towson right down to the wire. My heart was beating out of my chest sitting courtside. So it's a really good conference, Riley. I'm already excited to hopefully get back down to Care First Arena down in March for this tournament. But, yeah, a lot of parity, a lot of differences. People are going to have to work out some kinks in the non-conference portion of the season with all the new players they're going to have. It feels like, look, every mid and low major conference gets ravaged. Yeah. This one especially, it feels like it is gutted completely, and it is a total changeover every single year, at least in recent memory. So, yeah, going to be a great league once again. We'll be at the DAC on Saturday. We'll report back to you then on injury news and how people are looking. But it's coming, Riley. It doesn't feel like it yet. I don't know, for whatever reason, it doesn't feel real quite yet. But we are getting there. I saw Drexel tweet out today, 11 days until Widener comes into the DAC and the Drexel Dragons start the 25-26 season. So how about that? We're moving right along, and it's almost here. And Riley, I will see you in a gym sometime soon.
Yeah, very soon.
Absolutely. Well, gentlemen, thank you very much as always, especially you, Riley, for hopping on and previewing Drexel and the CAA. We very much appreciate you. If you want to check out Riley's stuff, at Riley Frain on Twitter, but also go to the Portal Report, go to Mid Major Madness. You know where to find all of his work, and it's great work as always. So keep that up, and thank you again for hopping on. You guys obviously know where to find our stuff at Big Five Pod on Twitter and Instagram. Check us out on podcast platforms, Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcasts, and of course YouTube to see our wonderful faces here. So with that, we will see you at our next conference preview.